welcome to episode 456 of This Is Whole Life. Of course, each week we deep dig? I think
we'll do whatever you want to do.
Okay. This is our last early 7:30 a.m. taping, so we are going to deep dig into the message this week here at Whole Life Church. And this year, we are in the year of overflow, and in support of that, we're going to continue our conversation with our Unreasonable Church series, which has had an effect on many of you because we've gotten a lot of emails, we've gotten texts, we've gotten stopped in the hall and asked questions there. And of course, if you're just listening and you're not in our vicinity to come and visit us at Whole Life, we just certainly would love the conversation to include your input. And you can do that each Saturday morning at 9:30 and 12 by joining us online for worship and jump in the chat with your question, or email podcast@wholelife.church, or voicemail text at 407-965-1607. This morning, we have someone, one of us, may you guess, is in Chicago, of all places. A crisp 38 when he checked in a little bit earlier. Lead Pastor Ken Wetmore, welcome, and stay warm, my friend.
That's what the hotel room is for. It's a balmy 72 in the hotel room.
It's just like you never left home.
Yeah, you know, pretty much. I just hang out in here and
bring the heavy coat for the afternoon. And as always, to my left and across the table, Dr. Melanie Bachman. And as we ascertained last week, it is Dr. Lucas with the questions.
Yes, sir.
That's right. Coming up later in the show. All right. Today we have a little bit of house cleaning that we need to get to. We had a couple of emails, and we had a question from Facebook Messenger, and I think it came in as a spam. I didn't see it, so Raul, my apologies to you, but this was sent on February the 15th after our message, Unreasonable Hospitality, and he asked this question: if God is a loving God, did he really destroy Sodom, or did he send the angels to advise Lot because he knew that something outside of God's wrath was the one to destroy it? A natural event, a meteor, or something else? So do we really, we're pretty sure that God was like, sorry guys, hospitality matters, and you've been warned, and now here we are. That's the one I'm going with.
Yeah. If you read what the Bible says, the Bible seems to indicate that God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And could he have used a meteorite or something like that? Sure. And there are people who tend to shy away from the wrathful God who destroys things. Yes. Personally, to me, it looks like God had kind of had enough of the way that these people were behaving. And the problem for me with, did God just know that there was, a meteor headed their way and warn Lot, is that if God's all powerful, then he could stop the meteor. So
sure. My
take is, that it's one of the difficult, with the flood, with a number of other things, it's one of the difficult aspects of God, and that they can be hard to think about and hard to sometimes reconcile. But I think that there is an aspect that we kind of can't understand as human beings, that when people pose a danger to society, there are times where we have to take measures to keep them from being a threat to others. And it's unpleasant, and it's a last resort. Yeah. And I believe that's how it is with God.
Yeah. No, So, Raul, I hope that answers your question. I felt when you just said, sometimes that is the reality, whether it's a little difficult sometimes when we start thinking about all the loving things that God is, but also sometimes these are the results of sin, and they're not always pleasant. So we got an email early this morning, my time. I'm pretty sure I kind of fell asleep and woke up and this was in my inbox. So I'm going to say this was a little gift from our friend. The email title was 3 things. It said, "Hey, Randy, there are 3 things that I really enjoyed about last Sabbath service. Ken was right about the praise team. They were absolutely on point." All right, that's 1 gold star. "I love seeing Rory at the end of the worship service. We need more dogs involved with the service." I believe this is directed at Melanie. "Dogs are my favorite kind of people." Well, if you love Rory, then I have to say 2nd gold star. That's 2 out of 3. And then 3.
So let's slow down for just a second. So I didn't know that Rory made it on the.
Yeah, he did the sign off with Gabby.
Oh, well, see, I think that was brilliant. I think that needs to happen more often. And for those who maybe don't know who Rory is our youth pastor Carla's service dog. And I think Rory ought to probably make more appearances.
I think we're going to have to put a picture of Rory in the chat just so you can kind of fall in love from afar. We'll put it in the Discord. And then maybe, Ken, maybe you're next up. Do next Q&A, I think that...
with Maisie?
Maisie.
Yeah. Thank Maisie?
I was going to go with Dixie.
I don't know that Maisie's reached service dog level of things yet. So but maybe we can think about it.
But as far as cuteness on the meter goes, I mean, come on.
Oh, well, I mean, she breaks the meter, so we know that.
There you go. And then finally, I loved the message of irrefutable belonging. Specifically, I am thankful that Whole Life does so much to embrace its online community. Keeping y'all in my prayers, Carolina Dave. So, hey.
Thanks, Carolina Dave.
Yeah.
Good to hear from you.
Haven't heard from him in a bit. The next one was email, "Hello, podcast team. I must say that being a hospitality professional, I love this series. I have always believed that hospitality should be practiced by all Christians, not just those of us who chose to make a career serving in that capacity. Anyway, this particular sermon really touched me, as I feel that there are many who have trouble feeling like they belong. I, for one, am often described as a friendly person, but may not go beyond the basic greeting to truly befriend others. I feel like the message challenged people like myself to go beyond the surface and truly invite others into belonging. My question, however, applies to those who may seek belonging, but have internal barriers that prevent them from feeling accepted. Do you have any advice for people who want to belong and are invited to the family, but perhaps do not want to get personal enough to truly connect? What can we do to show others that we as a church family are genuinely accepting them when they may be scarred by judgment and rejection that occurred in their past?" And I'll save the final question for after. What do you think about that, Ken?
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit when I was preparing the sermon and preaching it. Belonging is a two-way street. There's the person who's seeking belonging. There's the people or person that they're seeking belonging from, and really both. It kind of takes. You can offer belonging, but it doesn't mean that somebody has to accept it. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't even mean necessarily that the person doesn't want to accept it, but sometimes it's difficult for all the reasons that the person who sent that message wrote. And there's so many different ways to look at that question. I think if you know that you're having a really difficult time connecting with people because of barriers and trauma that's been in your life, finding a good mental health professional to work with is a really highly recommended thing, because sometimes we do sabotage ourselves, and and sometimes a good mental health professional can help us figure out why that's happening and how to get those barriers out of the way. Sometimes it's maybe that it isn't that deep, and maybe it's just going ahead and choosing to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. I think that the beginning stages of belonging can be a little bit uncomfortable when you're first kind of putting yourself out there, and so you kind of have to embrace the discomfort for a little bit to get to that place. And I think that we're not going to be best friends with everybody. There are just more natural fits of people that we like kind of see the world like in the same way. And
sure.
But that doesn't mean that that we can't be friends, and that we can't choose to extend belonging as a group. And so, I don't know. That's kind of, as I'm kind of thinking my way through that question. I guess the two things I would say is, number one, if you do have trauma in your life, find a good mental health professional to work with on that. It just will be helpful all the way around. And if it's maybe not quite that, just sometimes just recognize that relationships, especially starting relationships, can be uncomfortable. And really, honestly, you can, wherever you're at in relationships, they can be uncomfortable. Relationships aren't always super easy, but it's worth it to pursue them.
Absolutely. And, if it's maybe not, like you said, at the point where you feel like you need a licensed professional, there's also Stephen Ministers here at church that you can go and seek help from and have someone walk side by side with you. If you haven't or don't know about that ministry, wholelife.church/Stephen Ministries. And all the information is there, how to get involved if you would want to be someone that can walk with someone, or if you just need some help, find out how you can get someone to walk alongside you here at Whole Life Church. That's something that has been going on here for a few years already, and they would love to help you take that journey. So,
yeah, that's good, Randy. That's for sure another great resource. And I think I might just also add that if you are struggling with that and you would like to talk to one of our pastoral team,
yep.
we'd be happy to discuss it in more detail with you and walk with you there.
There you go. All right, we're down to the one question, and Ken, you're really going to like this question. So here we go. As a fellow lover of Thai cuisine and someone who grew up in the Daytona Beach area and still visits frequently, I would love to know the name of the Thai restaurant that was mentioned in the last episode, if Ken cares to share. Does Ken care to share? I know he does, because Ken cares. That's why he shares.
It was Zen Bistro, I think, was the name of it, right?
I think that sounds right. But
I know it's Zen. I think it's Zen Bistro Thai or something like that. So if you put Zen Bistro into your favorite search engine, Daytona Beach, it should pop up, and it is extraordinary. Did we talk about the Thai tea dessert? Oh my goodness, it was so good.
I'm not usually a fan of the desserts at most Thai.
Not usually, yeah.
And I think we passed enough plates that I think I got a little bit of everything, and there wasn't anything that I didn't. They're like, well, I could have had another bite of that if there, if there had been more. But yeah, it was all it was all delicious.
Yeah, you're welcome, and let us know. Go eat there and tell us whether we were right or wrong.
Yeah, there you go. And we'll go ahead and put that in the Discord as well, just to make sure that you're getting to the right place. And we don't recommend another Zen something that wasn't as good as what we had. So just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. So, all right, we got through all of that. Thank you. That was from Chelsea B, by the way. Thank you, Chelsea, Carolina, Dave, and from Raul. The conversation is always better if you are a part of it. So please do send questions, comments to the show, and we would love to go over them. All right, so belonging, wowzer. This was something that even if you were just watching online, I was watching on my iPad from the lobby because it was a volunteer job fair weekend here at Whole Life Church, and so just didn't really have a chance to get in, but turn around, pull back the curtains and look, and you could see heads bouncing up and down with like, yep, this is like, I'm getting it. And the thing that maybe, and I know this doesn't happen without love. You can't have belonging without love, because people that don't love don't care if anyone else belongs. And maybe they don't care if they belong themselves. But the belonging might be the first stepping stone of how somebody is going to perceive what a person or a group of people or a church. And you gave a definition from the National Institute of Health's medical library that said, indeed, a sense of belonging may be just as important as food, shelter, and physical safety for promoting health and survival in the long run. I don't think I've ever heard anyone put belonging in with food, shelter, and physical safety, which are like the three things that you need absolutely to survive. I mean, water's not mentioned, but I mean, that's just a given. But I mean, that's a pretty big top five if you want to look at it that way. Was this something you were expecting to find, or was this something? This was an aha moment.
I think a couple years ago, I'd done some research on this topic and kind of come across this concept. I can't remember whether I was reading a book or something like that. So I don't think I was as surprised this time, but I think the first time I looked at it, it was kind of a wow. I have someone close in my life who is adopted from another country where they were in an orphanage um, for, I can't remember how long, but as a baby. And basically, the only thing that they would, in this orphanage in another country, that they would just basically change the baby's diapers and give them food, but there was really no holding the babies. There's no anything like that. And I remember having this person that was close to me that had adopted this baby tell me how traumatized the babies were that came out of that, because they didn't have belonging, and there was nobody that really, cuddled them and talked to them. And it was, they were getting food, they were having their, this person said when they went to the orphanage, it was very clean. The babies were getting fed, and yet the babies were struggling to survive, because they didn't really have belonging, to just kind of put it that way. And so that's kind of an anecdotal, non-scientific thing, but the research that I looked through really supported that particular article or the blurb from it, that belonging is a really big deal.
Well, and the fact that Amelia Frank Meyer, the TEDx talk that you talked about, you're born connected to your mother. Like, connection is not the same as being claimed, but man, the closeness with how, we come into life and how we're born into this world, and you start to think about what are some of the best memories that you have of growing up, or even now for that matter. You start to think about all the different phases of your life, and when there's been times where maybe you haven't had the friendship or the support or that close person that you can just sit down next to and touch is such a big thing. And maybe it sounds like we really haven't been taking this idea of belonging maybe as serious as we should. I just when you said that, like, to find someone that, because you can be, if we're talking about claiming people that come to church, I mean, friendly sometimes can be a challenge. You have a bad week, and sometimes just putting on the smiley face and really inside your heart going like, okay, I can do this. I can be kind. I can be friendly. And then the next step, you can be a friend, but that can be hard. That can be even more difficult with new friends. You have time commitments. You're learning about each other. Do you have anything in common? And then kind of after that, you kind of become a family. And eventually you have history, which is good and bad. You have growth that everyone goes through. It's hard. It's rarely easy. But actually claiming people because that almost sounds a little bit like a marriage proposal. Like, maybe not till death do us part, but that's a big commitment that sounds really difficult, unless I'm missing a big piece that I...
Well, think about the psychological safety that comes from belonging.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a situation where you belong, the premium on, mistakes. For example, if you belong and you make a mistake, you know that there's still safety because you're still claimed. And I can imagine if you are in a situation where you don't belong and you make a mistake and you carry that all by yourself, and all of a sudden a mistake maybe threatens the feeling of safety that you might have. So I can see why belonging would be high up on the ladder of things that are crucial for a person's survival.
Yeah.
Physically, but also emotionally and spiritually.
But I'm glad we're actually talking about it, because I just, how many sermons do you listen to at church talking about belonging, or taking it a step further, actually claiming and saying, no, you do belong. And you're part of this group, and we love you, and it's okay to have the ups and the downs. We have the ups and downs right with you. And I think that maybe this is, while as difficult as maybe claiming could be, I'm also wondering about, once we've kind of all agreed, and to the best of the ability to take that side by side journey, maybe it's easier for us to give grace to each other, no matter where you see yourself in the hierarchy. Well, I'm new, or I've been here a while, or my faith journey's further than this person's. But when you see the ups and downs, if you've already claimed that person, to me, it seems easier to extend the grace that you already, you've been, maybe you're the person that's been there. Oh, I can extend grace to that person. I remember being there in that place, and vice versa. I'm new, but also someone is already taking me under their wing and said, well, that was crazy what you went through. And it's okay. We're going to walk side by side. We're going to, maybe a Stevens minister is walking with you, or like earlier we talked about, maybe it was something that you needed some professional counseling for, and you're still welcome, and everyone hasn't left you by the side, as so often happens when we have the things that happen, sins or situations, maybe better, that are stigmatized heavily. And go, man, people still smiled. I still got invited out for lunch, and nothing's changed, even though I'm not perfect. I wonder if that, maybe if we were to focus more on belonging and claiming, if that wouldn't be just a total better version of how we've done church.
I think what might be important, and this is, obviously this is something that Ken talked about in terms of reasonable versus unreasonable, are the prerequisites for belonging. Because I think that you can hear sermons about belonging from other churches, but it tends to be attached to a series of prerequisites. If you believe like we do, then you belong. If you dress like we do and act like we do, and eat like we do, then you belong. But the unreasonable church, like Ken said, is a church that you belong first and foremost.
Before they expect belief in conformity.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. That hit home for me, just for someone who took a long break, who was asked to not be at his home church long time ago.
You were invited to not be there.
I was kind of, I don't know if you want how the nice way to say it is, but yeah, you're not welcome here. Please don't come back unless certain expectations of myself and others are met. And so I know that Dale in the chat he was one of our online worship hosts, and we kind of traded those feelings online, and you could, for me personally, it really resonated, because I could feel exactly what he was talking about, and vice versa, and just to be accepted and to know that, before any of that happens, because that is such a huge monument to overcome when you're not even sure totally what all you're overcoming. Like, okay, well, I think I understand, this isn't acceptable, or this would be optimal in this situation, but I have no idea, one, how to attack it maybe, and if I've tried, it's not working, maybe I need to try something different, and it all just seems overwhelming. Whereas if it's like, no, we're all figuring this out together, and everyone gets to move and continue and to learn and to have grace, that's a totally different way to go about trying to attack something really, really difficult in our lives. So I think that was the, and Ken said, but those expectations aren't tied to you. You don't belong anymore. They're tied to, I love you. Wouldn't you like to be a better version of you? And I think all of us, even when you're in that spot, when you're in the tough spot, deep down, you may not want to hear, well, don't you want to be the better version of you? But inside, you know that you do. And I think that was, that just felt really, really good for a sermon and a message to really kind of say the things that most churches, I feel like, don't want to say out loud. If we do that, then what is it? We're just giving everybody a license to just, seems like a little bit of watered down grace, and we're just going to extend grace to everyone, and it's a free for all, and there's, then there's no rules.
It's kind of wasteful and extravagant, almost prodigal.
Yeah. And there's laughter from Chicago. No, it just so many people appreciated the idea and the implementation and the idea that this is something I think that Whole Life takes seriously. And it totally, not that there would be any reason it didn't, but I really felt like what you said, Ken, and how you said it really, really came through this week, and it was spot on. And so for others that I know that probably didn't chime in as Dale and I did, that it meant a lot for, at least for me and for Dale, and I think others that have been in that spot that just haven't felt like maybe I can be myself, because if I'm myself, am I still able to come? Am I still allowed at church? It's a real thing.
I think it's so important, and I think that churches sometimes just really miss the mark on this one, that a lot of times I think we reward dishonesty, and we reward people for not being authentic and for lying about what's really going on in their life. As long as you can, lie about what's going on, you're accepted and you belong. But the moment that you're like, yeah, I've got this problem, this is going on in my life, then it's like, oh, well, then you don't belong anymore, or you're not welcome here until you do conform and you do look like this, you act like that. And I have a strong belief that transformation doesn't happen in a void. It doesn't happen as a lone wolf, as all on your own. Transformation happens in community. And I think it's so important for people to belong, to be in community, to be in church. If the church wants to see transformation in people's lives, that isn't accomplished by telling them to go fix themselves. It's accomplished by having people in intimate relationship inside the church, that they have belonging, and then letting the Holy Spirit work with people, being godly influences about what it looks like. We can tell people all day long that they shouldn't gossip, but if inside the church we're gossiping, then that sends a different message than the message that says, hey, you shouldn't gossip, and we're not doing it either. And we're struggling with it. We're trying to do our best, but we make mistakes here and there. And so these are things that I think are really important for the church to think about. The whole point for me of church, what separates it from like belonging to your local, I don't know, country club, is that church is about transformation. All of us. It's for everyone. It's not like the outsiders come in so they can be transformed. We're all needing transformation, from the pastors to the deacons to the person who just walked in to the person who's feels like an outsider because they look completely different than everybody inside. We all need transformation. We're all being transformed to be more and more like Christ, and that's the goal of Christianity, is that transformation process. But it just does not. I'm trying to think how often it really works that a person is like, okay, you go ahead and work on yourself and come back to us.
Yeah.
When you've hit X standard. And it's been fascinating to me how the church, I think the first book that I read this year was, give me a second here because I want to tell you what it is. the first book that I read this year was a book called Respectable Sins, and the author talked about how the church spends a lot of time hammering on certain sins, but then there's other sins that the church is like, well, but that's just something we all struggle with, so that's okay.
The
Don't worry.
collective struggle.
And so
Oh, wow.
and so I think it's a little sad that certain people can come to church and we'll turn them away. We'll turn them away because, or we'll be like, well, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that. And yet there are other people that come to church that have sins that the Bible lists out that we're like, well, but that's it, it's okay. And some of these sins split churches, meanness, gossip. Just they really, you can't say that these sins aren't hurting the body of Christ, and yet we bear with, and we're like, okay, well, this, and we make excuses for those things, but we don't go ahead and have mercy and compassion on other people. And I'm not at all suggesting that we need to tolerate bad behavior, tolerate things like that. But I think that there is also an aspect of loving that person and walking with them and helping them find that transformation that they need to have. And it isn't something that I think there's a lot of times where, as a pastor, I'll have someone, well, why aren't you preaching against this or against that? And my answer is like, the reason is because I preach about, I don't believe transformation comes by telling people what not to do. I think the transformation really comes by telling people where to look and who to look to and who to model themselves after. And I would rather focus on the positive rather than the negative. My wife's a teacher, and one of the things that she'll tell you is that if you're constantly telling the kid, hey, quit doing this, quit doing that, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, that the kid will eventually get discouraged and just quit. But if you highlight, when they do the right behavior, say, oh, look at you, you were paying attention, that's so good. Did everybody see that so-and-so is paying attention? Good job. If you highlight the positives that people do, and that it's far more effective than the battering ram of you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong.
Yeah.
And so I kind of look at it a little bit the same way when it comes to working with older human beings, that we go ahead and rather than battering people down, and most of the people, by the way, when we start talking about the sins and things like that, most people know what they're doing when it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
They have a good sense of it.
Sure.
And again, it's not to say there's not a time when somebody is truly doing harmful behavior that's harming the group, that you don't say something or do something about it, or even when they're harming themselves, to say something or do something. But you do it out of love. You do it out of compassion. You do it out of wanting to not see the group hurt, not wanting to see the individual being hurt, and wanting to see them be able to be the full human being that God created them to be.
Yeah.
I think those of us who have grown up in the church have to some degree become conditioned to accept a certain level of toxicity inside of church bodies. And last weekend, there was someone who visited Whole Life, not from Whole Life, but I had a conversation with them afterward. And some of the things that the person was describing that are happening in their home church, I thought, oh my goodness, you know what? I grew up around that, and I didn't realize that wasn't normal and healthy until I got out of it. And now I'm looking at it thinking, oh my goodness, that's toxic and weird. Like what? And yet there's still often a certain amount of harboring people who want to make sure that other people don't belong instead of the other way around.
Man, that's so true. Mm-hmm. You don't even see it sometimes, or you don't understand the depth of it until you've been away from it and you're in a different environment where that's not the case, and you look back, or you have people come and tell you about what's happening. Someone close to me visited not too long ago, and I was like, wow, I don't miss any of that. But also, you kind of forget it's happening other places, and also makes you feel very, very sad. But I wanted to, but right before we get to Lucas and the questions today, something, and this is just personal for me because I got to sit with Wendy. If you were here for, well, both first and second, you saw Wendy's video joining Whole Life Church by profession of faith. And I got to sit down and Lucas and I for about 20 minutes with Wendy and get to ask her questions and get to hear about her story and what brought her to Whole Life. And I had no idea where Ken was going with this message. And you think belonging, but sometimes in the day to day, it was just like, well, I have to get Wendy's, story, and we're going to talk. And one of my favorite things that I get to do here is to do baptism videos and profession of faith. It just getting to ask people questions and then watch them warm up and then get comfortable and then just answer from the heart. And I don't know if you caught the last part of what she said, but really, if you looked at the whole thing, she started with, I came here because I asked some coworkers if they thought I would enjoy it here. I came and I immediately felt a sense of belonging, and I forget what else she said, and I've never left. And then at the end, my last question to her was, if someone else were to ask you, do you know of a good church that I could go to? And, Whole Life, why would you tell them Whole Life? And it's because you can be yourself. You don't have to deal with expectations of you being anybody but that. And her final two were, I think what Whole Life does best is that it is a safe place and that it is, I just tried to cheat and go on the website, but that's not part of the message. So I didn't have it readily available at it. But basically, the whole reason that she has made the journey to Whole Life was exactly what Ken was preaching about, which to me was just a little goosebump moment. It's fun to be a part of those things where you don't see that connection is going to necessarily, but it was just like word for word. It was exactly spot on. And it's just cool to see God work like that. That was just really awesome. So,
yeah. Well, there's something that I wanted to add to.
Yeah.
I had a friend visiting from Brazil a couple weeks ago, and it got me thinking because I feel that the feeling of belonging, it transcends culture, it transcends language. And he came to me, he said, man, it really feels like home here. It was his first time visiting.
Wow.
And he doesn't speak English. So I was like, man, that's nice. Even not understanding and sharing a different culture, he was able to feel that he belonged here. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. That was good stuff. Good stuff. All right. The hair's raised and there we go. All right. Lucas, take it away with the questions.
Yep. So here we go. How do we balance creating a welcoming environment with the call to discipleship and spiritual growth, ensuring that belonging is not just about comfort, but also about transformation?
I think that goes back to what I talked about a little bit earlier, that the church, the purpose of the church is transformation. It's the difference between being your country club versus being a church. But with that said, one of the things that I think we have to be careful about is that we understand our roles. And the Holy Spirit's role is to guide people into all truth. Our role is to give people a sense of belonging, to share, to help provide resources that will help in that transformation process. But I think that one of the things I always feel a little bit concerned about is that it feels like sometimes churches think that it's their responsibility to tell people the order in which transformation needs to happen in their life and to dictate what the transformation looks like, the timeline of it. And I think that's really dangerous because, orange trees don't need the same type of soil. They don't need the same type of atmosphere as an apple tree, as a kiwi tree, as blueberries or strawberries. And I think that sometimes we kind of treat people as like one size fits all, which we all know one size fits no one. And so the fact of the matter is that people are individuals, and each one of us is on our own transformation journey. And so it's absolutely important to remember that the church isn't a country club just to give people warm fuzzies and that. And yet belonging has to be really high priority, because until they feel safe, the real transformation that needs to take place in their life won't happen. Because if I can't be honest with you about what's really going on in my life, because I'm afraid that if I do that, you're going to reject me, well, then how can you speak into something that nobody wants to talk about? How can you go ahead and have conversations about these things? And so that's the part that I think is important. So absolutely, discipleship is so important. And it's one of the things that we have, Randy and Melanie, we have invested a lot of time over the last 3 or 4 months talking about this, and not just talking about, but starting to create a real pathway at whole life that's defined, and that we can kind of create um, the opportunity for people to encounter transformation at the pace and the way that God wants to do it in their lives, but also share that there is that expectation of, hey, we're all here to grow. We're all here to be disciples of Jesus. And so I think it comes down to a very intentional discussion, what it looks like, what the whole life, the way that God would have us do it a whole life. And we definitely are excited about some of the things that are going to be coming out in the near future.
Yep.
What should a church do when a longtime member feels like they no longer belong, whether due to personal struggles, theological disagreements, or feeling overlooked? How do we determine whether the issue is with the individual's perception or the church's culture?
Well, that's such a good question.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's very easy, particularly when a church goes through a lot of growth rapidly, change of leadership, which we've had a whole life. It's very easy for people to kind of who had a sense of belonging to question whether that belonging's still there.
Yeah.
My encouragement for people like that is to come have open and honest talks with myself, with the other members of the pastoral team, about what they're experiencing, and let's talk about it together. I think that probably as churches grow and redefine, there is a kind of a constant question mark of, do I belong? And I'd like to say that you do. The invitation is to belong. But the other side of the question is, do you want to belong to what's happening? And that's part of the discussion. And my invitation is, if that's something you're experiencing at whole life, please come have a conversation with me about it. I'm very passionate about everybody belonging, not just new people, or not just but people who have been members at the church for a long, long time. Like I said, if you're struggling with any of those things that really great question asked, come chat with us. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay, another one. How should a church respond when someone feels they don't belong? Not because of exclusion, but because they struggle with God's truth, repentance, or obedience.
Can you read that one more time, Lucas?
Yeah. How should the church respond when someone feels they don't belong, not because of exclusion, but because they struggle with God's truth, repentance, or obedience?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to the tail end of what I just said earlier. The invitation to belong is out there, but not everybody is going to resonate with the values of every church. There are churches that I've attended in the past that I would not attend now. They don't resonate with my values, with what I believe. The way that they do things, I feel like, to what Melanie talked about earlier, it's toxic. It's not based on what I believe the Bible calls for. And so for me, it's not where I want, not where I want to be, not where I want to put my time. I try not to be overly judgmental of that. I tend to say, well, maybe that meets the needs of another group of people, but it doesn't align with my values. But
That's really interesting, Ken, because I heard that question differently. What I
Oh,
heard,
okay.
what I heard in the question was, hey, I feel like I don't feel like I don't belong because of exclusion, which tells me that there seems to be like some maybe relational connection or maybe cultural connection. But what if I don't believe everything everyone around me seems to believe? Or what if I'm not doing the same things that I think the underlying question that I heard, and maybe I'm wrong, is do I actually belong? On the surface, maybe it looks like I belong, but do I really? Because there's turmoil underneath all of that. And if that is the question that the person was asking, I would say that all of us are on different journeys, and at some point we're all going to feel misaligned. Do I actually belong in this situation? And I think resting in the sense of belonging that you have with the people around you, and knowing that it's okay for you to go through different phases. It's okay for you to rethink your values and your beliefs and where you are. Now, obviously, if you feel completely misaligned to the point of where, it's causing the kind of turmoil that you would have to leave, then that would be kind of more what Ken was describing about when it's time to find another place. But if it's just a matter of, hey, I feel like I belong, but I'm not really sure I belong, because what if people knew that I didn't really believe this, or I wasn't really doing that particular thing because I don't feel like that's, what God's asking me to do. I would say just hold on, because I think there's space for that whole life.
I agree with what you just said in the question. And the good news was we had two others that Ken absolutely just answered like verbatim. So I think that we cleared the questions out and answered what was being asked. But to your point, I feel like sometimes when you don't feel like I'm not sure I fit in, because I'm not particularly feeling like my relationship with God is anything special right now. I'm struggling. I feel like maybe like you said, I don't know that I believe that this part or this certain area or maybe big parts, but at the same time, I feel like that's when you're growing and the Holy Spirit is kind of pushing you a little bit like, hey, this is something to think about. And you start looking at other people and wondering where they fit in to what you're thinking. And I would just say in the same way, we are all on a certain path with the Holy Spirit, and it just ends up where the devil likes to use those pieces and say, yeah, you're probably not really part of the group. I mean, look at Melanie. I mean, she's smart, and she's got it put together. And here you are, this this whatever newbie, or
that is not where I thought you were going with that.
I know.
You're saying that we don't belong on the table.
but it's really easy to compare ourselves to what we think it should look like, and for us, it may not look exactly like somebody else's journey. It most often doesn't. And that's not a reason to think that you don't belong or that the invitation's been rescinded. But the biggest part, I feel like, is what Ken was talking about earlier. We're not rescinding the invitation unless something crazy happens. The invitation is there. Be confident that you are wanted and you do belong, and we want to claim you just like we want to be claimed. And so, and when Melanie said, just hold on a little bit, that is, one, it's hard, but two, it really is the thing that pulls us through, is just sometimes holding on until you finally get past whatever it is that roadblock that's causing you, either mentally, physically, whatever, spiritually, to just feel that belonging, and just hold on. And when you get past it, it's like, oh, it's another step. Now, of course, there's always another step to go after that. So it's not like it's over or anything.
Nobody arrives.
No, and then they steal the little drummer boy from you, and then you question everything you knew.
Wow, Randy, so bitter,
I'm telling you, I'm never going to let it go. I can't. It's my drummer boy. I just can't. All the questions this week were really thought-provoking, and I love the fact that, you're also willing to share those thoughts and feelings. That's part of belonging. That's part of claiming your spot here, is to say that, I do need to learn. I want to learn. I want to be better, as do we all, and wherever we are on those journeys. So that's kudos to everyone who's been just pouring into this message series. So this is a hit. I can't wait to see where we're going in this week. Oh, it's collective something.
It's a cheerful generosity.
Oh, collective.
You were so close. So
Wow.
close, Randy.
Wow.
And so far away.
But yet so far.
But we're going to be cheerful about it as we generously allow you to not quite get it right.
Oh man, this is what happens when your iPad runs out of battery while you're just finishing the last sentence. You're like,
You just got to wing it.
I'll remember that. It's easy. I'll remember that in the morning. Of course I will. Not. All right. So what did you just say it was?
Cheerful generosity.
Cheerful generosity, and then we have one more after that. Correct? Before
Yes.
we're done.
We do.
Yes, we
We're
do.
talking about inspiration.
Ooh, inspiration.
Enthusiastic inspiration.
Ooh.
Yeah.
These kind of have a theme going. I'm liking it. I'm
Yeah.
liking it. Okay, so 2 more to go here, and then what's after that? I know that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but do we know what's next?
We have a couple guest speakers because I am going to be traveling to Guam. First time in 20 years we've been back. So
What?
I'm going to bring back another 20 years worth of stories. So got
That would have been good trivia on Ken's birthday bash. How long has it been since Ken has stepped foot on the sweet soil of Guam? I don't know if
There it
anyone would
is.
have guessed 20 years.
Yeah, it's been 20 years. It'll be almost exactly 20 years, almost
Wow.
to the day.
Well,
Anyway,
congratulations.
but not quite. But yeah, so we're going to go see Kyla, and since she's there, and
Yeah.
doing that over spring break. So we'll have 2 guest speakers. Melanie, do we know who our guest speakers are? I know that. Are we?
Yeah, March 15th is going to be Jose Montenegro.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
JT.
JT is going to speak for us.
Nice.
So that's going to be really
Excellent.
I like that. So cool. Hey Ken, are you gonna talk to the old team at the news station? Are you gonna do a
guest
I am Ken
appearance.
Wetmore somewhere?
awesome.
What,
Yeah,
what,
I feel like you need to do that.
do you got a surprise for us or what?
I don't know. Well, I am definitely going to go see the old news station. So
Nice.
whether or not they let me whip out my signature phrase or not, I don't know. But
Well, make sure.
I was really super excited though. I reached out to my videographer actually both of my videographers that I had 2 videographers that I did a lot of work with. One was like the one that we did all the super adventurous ones together. He was kind of a young guy. I was a young guy. And so when we did the aircraft carrier landing and sniper training and any of the stuff that was maybe a little bit more adventurous and maybe had some level of danger in it, I do that with Don Tana. And so I reached out to him, and then I reached out to Mike Villagomez, who Mike was my videographer most of the time. We would he had a family, and he was a little bit older, and so he was like, yeah, when you got the crazy things, take Don Tana with you. But kind of more of the day-to-day stuff. He was actually we did a series when my daughter Kyla was born, and he was the videographer in the delivery room. So he was like a really close friend of mine. So I'm super
Really
excited.
close.
Reached out to
Was
him.
he a really good close friend of Rochelle's also? Because it seems like that might be important.
Yeah, we didn't worry about that. Yes. So when I asked about having a videographer in the room, she was like, you can bring Mike, and that is your option.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
He was the safe person.
All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you how Mike's work's been on CNN. It's been on he's an amazing videographer, and he, I mean, really award-winning good. He's amazing. And I'm telling you right now, you can take the raw video that he shot in the delivery room and you could show it on TV. That's how he has all the angles. There was nothing there that would have been inappropriate for TV, and that's the raw video that he
Nice.
shot. So he was incredible at what he does. And
We're gonna have to
so
send.
I
We're gonna have
can't-
to send you some ideas. I think, like for some 60-ishes. We're gonna have to bank a couple of those, maybe. I don't know. We're
Okay.
gonna have
We
to
can
do
do that.
something. This is too much. This is too good to not.
so I'm doing that. And then the other super exciting thing for us is, well, while we were on Guam, we did a church plant there. It was kind of an ambitious idea. It was a friend of ours who is a doctor at the Seventh-day Adventist Clinic. We kind of realized that most of the Adventist churches on Guam did not have a whole lot of the local Guamanians, the Chamorro people. There really weren't. Um, there was a lot of other people who kind of have come to the island, but not really a ton of the local people are aimed at that. And so we decided to try to do a church plant that would be more for like Chamorro people on the island, that would be appealing to them. So two white guys trying to do that. It was
Still
kind
going?
of amusing.
Is it still going?
It is, and
Wow.
that's what's so exciting. And it actually, while we were there, we weren't really particularly fulfilling the mission as well. But my daughter says that that's what it is now. It is that it kind of it is now that church that we had dreamed it to be, and so that's kind of exciting. So I think it's going on 23 years that it's been going, maybe 22,
Wow.
23 years. So, and I get to preach at it while I'm there.
Wow.
So,
Sweet.
yeah.
Well, maybe take
Very excited.
take one of the guys and get a little video footage, or well, maybe Rochelle could use the iPhone too. That'd probably work.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure something out.
Cool,
but
cool.
yeah, I'm super excited about that. So it's going to be
Excellent.
amazing. And I have to say, so for everybody who's like wondering what's up with me being in Chicago, Whole Life hosts Global Leadership Summit every year. Well, at least for the last 2 years, and we'll be doing it again this year in August. It's the first Thursday and Friday in August. I don't know what the dates are on that.
16th and 17th, I think.
Yeah.
But wholelife.church/GLC 2025.
GLS.
GLS 2025. What did I say? GLC?
And people can actually sign up for that right now, right?
I believe it's open because they right afterwards. So yeah, you know, the later it gets, the more expensive it gets. So
and you actually right now is the time to sign up if you want the best deal that you can get. I think that the rates haven't gone up just yet, but basically, Global Leadership Summit invites pastors, the lead pastors of churches that are hosting GLS to Chicago. They invite us here to Chicago for 2 days of meetings. They've got a number of speakers that are going to be chatting with us, and they invited us last year, and I had other stuff going on, but this year I decided I wanted to check out what they have going on. And I've never actually been to Willow Creek Church before, and so I'm kind of excited to they're going to give us a tour of Willow Creek, see what they do here. So that's going to be fun. But I think probably the highlight of this trip though happened last night. We have two of our church members who have actually just recently moved to Chicago for work with Advent Health. And it was super awesome because I knew they'd made the move. And so I reached out and said, hey, any chance you guys would be available to have dinner or something? And so Elise and her husband, Brian, had supper with them. And then Dave had supper with, actually the four of us all had supper together last night here in Hinsdale, which is, I guess out on the outskirts of Chicago.
Yep.
So just had a great time with them, and super fun to connect with church members who are in a different part of the country, but I imagine they may be becoming members of churches here in the Chicago area, but for the moment they're still our church members. So it's fun to be able to run into them and spend some time with them. And they're all just terrific people.
Oh, that's awesome. Never know when Ken's coming to your town, even if
just let me know. I'll drop in.
I'll drop in. Hey, what? The final thing I wanted to say was, I just thought about it. If you weren't in person worshiping with us this past week, and if you missed the online version. I will put the link to Wendy's video in the Discord because I did want you to get a chance to see that too, because it was a really cool story and the way it all pulled together. And that way, if you happen to see her, you can also just say, "Oh, hey, Wendy, welcome aboard," and I'm claiming you as a whole life member. There you go. All right, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Thanks for listening, Ken. Stay warm, enjoy yourself, and we'll see you later this week. And have a great week, everyone.